They didn't fear the strongest warrior. They didn't fear the largest army. They didn't even fear rebellion the way movies make us believe. Ancient civilizations feared something else entirely. They feared the moment when people realized that power does not last forever. Because violence can be crushed. Armies can be defeated. Rebellions can be put down. But once people understand that a system has an expiration date, obedience collapses from the inside. Quietly. Irreversibly. And that awareness was more dangerous than any weapon. By the end of this story, you'll understand why ancient civilizations feared one specific type of mind more than armies, kings, or gods, and why that fear has never really disappeared. Because this is not a story about strength. It's a story about seeing the future too early. In ancient astrology, that awareness had a name. Aquarius. Not the modern stereotype. Not emotion. Not chaos. Not rebellion for rebellion's sake. In the ancient world, Aquarius represented something far more unsettling. The future arriving before society was ready. The symbol was the water-bearer. But water didn't mean emotion. Water meant survival. It meant law, knowledge, the invisible systems that kept civilizations alive. The water-bearer didn't create water. He distributed it. He understood where it flowed, and when it would run out. And that understanding made ancient societies deeply uncomfortable. Because ancient power depended on one sacred illusion, that the world as it was the world as it would always be. Kings didn't rule simply because they had armies. They ruled because people believed the order they lived under was permanent. Empires weren't just political structures. They were cosmic agreements. Law reflected the universe. Hierarchy reflected destiny. So when someone appeared who understood cycles, not myths, but patterns, they weren't seen as wise. They were seen as dangerous. Because cycles imply endings. And endings undermine worship. In ancient astrology, Aquarius was not personal. It governed eras, collective shifts, the turning of ages. It was ruled by Saturn, the most feared planet in the ancient sky. Saturn didn't bring comfort. Saturn brought limits. Time, decay, consequence. Saturn asked one question no ruler ever wanted asked. How long can this last? That question alone could destabilize a civilization. And history shows us exactly how ancient societies responded to it. They didn't argue with it. They silenced it. Let's talk about Rome. Rome depended on astrology far more than modern history likes to admit. Emperors consulted astrologers before battles, before marriages, before political decisions. They believed the heavens reflected the fate of the empire. But there was one unforgivable crime: predicting the fall of power. Not rebellion, not conspiracy, knowledge. Roman law repeatedly exiled, imprisoned, or executed astrologers, not because they lied, but because they might be right too early. Because astrology didn't need weapons. It only needed time. And time always wins. Here's what Rome understood with terrifying clarity. You can control people who fear punishment. You cannot control people who understand patterns. Patterns make obedience feel temporary. And once obedience feels temporary, authority begins to rot. This is the first mini-collapse moment. Not the fall of an empire, but the fall of certainty. And certainty is what holds civilizations together. This fear wasn't theoretical. It lived in myth long before it lived in law. Cassandra of Troy didn't carry a sword. She didn't lead armies. She didn't challenge kings. She warned. She saw the collapse before it happened. And that was enough to make her unbearable. Cassandra wasn't punished because she was wrong. She was punished because she was right and couldn't be stopped. She predicted Troy's destruction again and again. And the city didn't ignore her because they doubted her accuracy. They ignored her because believing her would destroy the illusion holding their world together. Because once you accept collapse is coming, you can't pretend everything is fine. That moment, when pretending stops, is where fear truly begins. Not fear of enemies. Fear of truth. Cassandra represents the purest form of Aquarius energy. Seeing the future clearly. Speaking it honestly. Being isolated for it. She didn't attack power. She revealed its fate. And fate is far more frightening than rebellion. Now pause here. Because this pattern repeats. Again, and again, and again. Take Athens. Socrates never organized a revolt. He didn't call for revolution. He didn't attack democracy. He asked questions. Questions that exposed contradictions. Questions that revealed uncertainty beneath confidence. Athens didn't kill Socrates because he was violent. They killed him because he destabilized certainty. Because certainty is what binds societies together. Once people realize they don't know what they thought they knew, authority begins to dissolve. Aquarius energy doesn't overthrow systems. It dissolves illusions. And illusions don't explode. They fade. That fade terrifies power more than attack ever could. This is the midpoint shift. Because now the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Astrologers, prophets, philosophers, not warriors. The ancient world consistently feared those who could see beyond the present moment. Because those people understood cycles. And cycles do not negotiate. Empires rise. Empires peak. Empires decay. Not because of moral failure. Not because of betrayal. But because all systems exhaust themselves. Rome didn't fall in a day. It weakened gradually. Predictably. Systematically. Those who recognized it early were not celebrated. They were silenced. Because awareness spreads faster than armies. And once awareness spreads, control weakens. Aquarius doesn't destroy power. It reveals when power no longer works. That revelation terrifies every civilization that depends on belief. And belief is the true currency of power. This is why Aquarius was never a comfortable archetype in ancient astrology. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't nurturing. It wasn't reassuring. It was cold clarity. It asked uncomfortable questions about the future while everyone else clung to the present. It saw endings where others saw stability. And history shows us again and again what happens to those people. They're tolerated when useful, controlled when inconvenient, removed when threatening. Not because they attack power, but because they expose its limits. Here comes the highest emotional peak. Because this fear never disappeared. It only evolved. Today we don't execute astrologers. We discredit analysts. We isolate whistleblowers. We dismiss system critics as pessimists. Not because they're wrong, but because they're early. Aquarius energy has always lived ahead of its time. That's why it feels out of sync. Why it feels detached. Why it feels misunderstood. Because societies are built to survive the present, not to face the future honestly. And here's the quiet truth ancient civilizations understood better than we do. The most dangerous moment for power isn't rebellion. It's realization. Once people realize a system is temporary, they stop worshiping it. And worship is what keeps empires alive. This is why ancient civilizations feared Aquarius. Not for strength, not for violence, not for chaos, but for clarity. Clarity about time, about cycles, about endings. Clarity that cannot be undone. Because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. And that knowledge spreads. Silently. Relentlessly. If you've ever felt out of sync with the present. If you see patterns others ignore. If you've been called detached when you're simply seeing further ahead. History has always needed people like that. Even if it doesn't thank them for it. If this story gave you a new way to see history, power, or yourself, help it reach the people who need it. Like the video. Share it with someone who thinks deeply about systems and cycles. And subscribe for more long-form explorations like this. Because understanding the past isn't about nostalgia. It's about recognizing what's coming next.